Everyone, this week's Parsha is Parshas Kisavai, Tavshin Pei Daled. We're going to start in Parak Chav Zayin, chapter 27, Pasuk Yud Aleph, verse 11. Vayetzav Moshe Sa'am Bayemahu Leimar. Moshe commanded the nation that day, saying, Eila Yamdu Levarecha Sa'am Al Har Gerizim. These are those who will stand to bless the people on Mount Gerizim, V'avrachem Es HaYarden, when you cross over the Jordan. Now, back in Parshas Re'eh, the Torah already told us that Moshe told the Jewish people that when you enter the land of Israel, there are going to be two mountains. One is called Har Gerizim, Mount Gerizim. The other one is called Har Evel, Mount Evel. And half of the Jewish people are going to stand on one mountain, and half the tribes are going to stand on one mountain. The other tribe is going to stand on the other mountain. One mountain is going to be the mountain that represents the blessings, and the other one will represent the curses. And as we read in the Parsha, Moshe now tells us which tribes will stand where. And the process that happened is that so you had 6 tribes on one mountain, 6 tribes on the other mountain. The Levium, the Levites, they stood in the middle, and they would turn towards one mountain and say the blessing, and then they would turn to the other mountain and say the curse. Now the Torah, if we skip a few more verses down to verse Tesvav 15, let's just see the first thing the Torah says. So the Torah says that, actually let's start at Yud Daled at 14. V'anu al-Leviim v'amru, the Leviim will raise their voices and say, Al kol ish Yisrael, to every Jewish person, kol ram in a loud voice. Arur ha'ish, cursed be the person, asher yaseh fesel l'ma'asecha, who makes a graven or molten image, Toyavas Hashem, which is an abomination to God, Masi de Charesh, a craftsman's work, the Sam Baseser, and places it in secret. So he makes an idol and he worships it in secret. Nobody knows he's doing it. So on that is the first of the curses listed here, is a curse on a person who does that. So that means the Levium they were the ones who said this curse, but they said it facing Mount Gerizim, facing Mount Evel, when they said the curse, and then v'anu v'amru amen, and and all the nation would respond and say amen. Now, the next pasuk again says arur. All the pasukim here talk about the curses, but we know that there were also brachas. There were also blessings that were said, and the blessings were the opposite of the curses. And the first curse is cursed be the person who makes the idol. The blessing is blessed be the person who doesn't make the idol. So all the list of curses brought down here, the Torah lists the curses, but the blessings were the opposite of the curses. And again, the Levium would utter the blessing facing towards Mount Gerizim. They would say the blessing. Everyone would respond. The entire nation would respond. And then they would face towards Mount Evel and pronounce the curse. And everyone saying amen. And this was the process by all the list of things now mentioned in the next number of verses, the different curses and blessings that were said. And now we're going to focus on the last one mentioned, which is Parak Chavav, Pasuk Chavav, verse 26. I'm going to go through the last one. So with a number of things, just quickly to go through the other curses. There's a curse for a person who degrades his father and mother. A curse for someone who moves back the boundary of his fellow. He moves the boundary, giving himself more. A curse be the person who causes a blind person to stumble. Talks about curse be the person who perverts the judgment of the weak, the convert, the widow, the orphan. Curse be people who perform certain illicit acts certain illicit acts. Then it talks about curse be the person who strikes, who hurts his friend secretly. Curse be the person who takes a bribe. Okay, those were just a quick list of what's mentioned, and now we have Chavav. Oror asher lo yakim es divrei haTorah hazois la'asois eisam. Cursed be the person who does not yakim. Now, this word yakim is going to be a word. That's the word we're going to focus on tonight, and see how the commentaries explain that word. But for a strict definition right now, we will translate it as cursed for the person asher lo yakim, that will not stand up. Cursed be the person who will not stand up the words of Torah. You may be looking in your translation over there, Akadi, and it may not say it that way. The wording here in the English, they use the word uphold. But that is more of a interpretation based on how you want to interpret the word and define the word. But if you take the word yakim itself, I think the first interpretation, the first translation you would give is, cursed be the person that will not yakim, that will not stand up the words of the Torah to do them. Okay, now, so the question is, what does this mean? What does it mean, the person who does not stand up the words of Torah? What does it mean? And vice versa. And the bracha was, blessed be the person that does stand up or lift up the words of the Torah. What does it mean? So that's what we're going to focus on. So we're going to start with the Ramban.
What it means? See translation.
What's his translation?
What is the same in English, probably.
No, it depends how you explain it.
But
how does he translate it?
Translated is no problem to understand translation. If you don't perform this,
he says don't perform.
Yeah.
Okay, so he's saying he's actually working with Rashi's interpretation, which sounds which that translation sounds like, there are certain specific things that get a curse, and then there is a general, right? General for everything in the Torah. There's a curse.
Yeah.
So the truth is, if there's a curse for everything in the Torah, why are there curses, these specific curses mentioned before? They're also part of the Torah.
Yeah.
Okay, but the answer to that may be that, these are, there's a curse for not keeping the rest of everything in the Torah, and there's a special curse if you do these things. It's almost like a double. You've got the curse of the whole Torah and a specific curse for that thing itself. But even according to Rashi, when Rashi says a curse for someone who does not uphold the Torah, what does that mean? What is he not doing? He's intentionally not doing the Torah. He's unintentionally not doing the Torah. What does it mean he's not upholding? In the very least, it sounds like he's not keeping, he's not performing. In the very least, it sounds like he's doing it intentionally. And if a person intentionally does not keep the words of the Torah, there's a curse. That's what would seem like Rashi's explanation. But let me tell you now the Ramban. The Ramban has a couple of interpretations. And one interpretation is going to be similar to Rashi, but not exactly. And according to the Ramban, the first interpretation he has of yakim means, actually the word yakim can be like the word lekayem, which means to accept. To accept. Or you could say lahakim means like a general word to uphold, but it means cursed be the person who does not accept the Torah. The reason he doesn't accept the Torah. So the Ramban says like this. Imagine a person who's like this. If you ask him, do you believe there's reward and punishment for keeping the mitzvahs or not keeping the mitzvahs? And the person would say, of course I do. Okay. Do you believe that God gave the Torah and he gave the mitzvahs? Yeah, except for one. There's one of them that I don't believe he gave that one. That one's a made-up one.
What one?
Whatever one he says. Meaning he says, I accept 612 mitzvahs, but one mitzvah, nah, I don't believe in that one. Why don't you believe in it? You don't believe in it because a person says, I don't believe God gave that one. You don't believe in it. I think the Rambam means when you say that, it's not relevant anymore. The Malbim learns that way. It's not relevant anymore. The Ramban says that the curse is for a person who does not accept every principle of the Torah. If you keep everything but one thing, and the but one thing that you're keeping is because you deny it, you say it was never given by God, it was never part of the Torah, or you say, as I think the Ramban says, but the Malbim says, or you say that it's not applicable anymore, or you can't apply all mitzvahs to all people in all situations. If that is what you say, whether you say it used to be relevant, now it's not relevant anymore, or it doesn't apply to everyone, it only applies to certain people, not these people, that's what we're talking about. That person the Ramban calls a mored ha'kaifer. He's rebellious and he's a denier. He's denying the authenticity of part of the Torah. That is what the curse is. And the Ramban says, but let's say you have a person, this is how he says, Kagoin, let's say you have a person who eats, and I think he means, again, he's intentional. He's clearly talking about that. A person who eats something not kosher because temptation. He knows it's a mitzvah. He knows it's forbidden, but he can't control himself. He gives in to his temptations. So he's not denying the mitzvah, but he's intentionally not keeping it. Why is he not keeping it intentionally? Some person, you can have a person, why is he not keeping the mitzvah of the Torah? I don't believe it anymore. I'm rebelling against the God. I don't believe in the mitzvah anymore. Okay, that's the person in the curse. But let's say that person that says, why are you eating this? He says, I can't control myself. I can't control my desire for it. It's too tempting to me. That person, says the Ramban, is not in this curse. This curse is about a person who denies, who either says it never was given, it's not applicable anymore, it doesn't apply to me or to others for some reason, or I reject it. I don't believe it anymore. I reject this thing. I don't believe it anymore.
But not applicable. It is common. Many mitzvahs is not relevant today.
But that's not the issue. Let's say one that is relevant, he says, is not relevant. The ones that aren't relevant, the Torah itself tells us, and the Torah itself tells us either through the Torah or through the Talmud that that's not relevant. A sacrifice is not relevant, right? But let's say a person decides to say, I have said this story many times before. My father used to tell a story that when he was living in Savannah, Georgia, he was driving and he put on the radio, and it was a Jewish radio program, and they had a rabbi, and the rabbi said that nowadays it is permissible to eat pork, because the reason why pork was forbidden by the Torah is because pork had trichinosis, gave a certain type of disease. But now that we're able to, deal with there is no more problem with trichinosis in pork, you're allowed to eat pork.
This rabbi said, or
a Reform rabbi said that. Okay, now that's an example. Now the Torah doesn't say that. That's not the rules of the Torah. That's not the rules of the Torah. The rules of the Torah are that we have indications. The Torah itself tells us which ones apply only in Eretz Yisrael, which ones apply only when we are all living in Eretz Yisrael, which mitzvahs apply only when we have a Beis Hamikdash. Those all have sources to them. But this person, and the example I gave you, is a person who's just making up their own thing and trying to say that because of this, it's not applicable anymore. There's no more mitzvah, no more prohibition anymore. That's included in this curse. But a person who, let's say, eat kosher because of the fact he knows it's wrong, but he can't, for whatever reason, he's given into his temptation and he can't break it. That's not what we're talking about. Let's say another person, he gives another example. This is a really interesting example. Just, we'll call it a theoretical. Shalei asa sukkah v'lulav. You ask a guy, hey, how come you're not building a sukkah? I'm too tired. I don't want to bother.
This is right.
Again, it's a mitzvah. He knows it's a mitzvah, but again, some kind of thing in his head, right? That it's too much for him to do.
This is right.
What?
Every year I say the same thing.
Okay, so that person, that's an example. That's an interesting example that he gives. So it's a very interesting example because really you're not doing the sukkah because he says because of laziness. He doesn't build the sukkah because he's lazy. Okay. That's a very interesting example. But he says that person is not included in this pasuk. The curse is going on the person who denies, the person who rejects, the person who says that this mitzvah is not a mitzvah. Whether it's not a mitzvah ever anymore, I don't believe in it anymore, whatever he says, chas v'shalom. At the end of the day, if you're in denial or rebellion against the mitzvah, that is who's included in this curse. So you could be someone that you could believe in everything. I believe in everything except for one thing. I believe in everything other than I don't believe in the prohibition of pork anymore because no more trichinosis. If there's even one mitzvah that you reject, that you are included in this error. You are included in that curse. That is the first explanation that the Ramban gives. Then the Ramban cites the Talmud Yerushalmi, the Jerusalem Talmud, that says that says like this. Again, it cites the pasuk Arshar Lo Yakim. Clearly, and you'll see from the question that the Yerushalmi translated Lo Yakim as will not stand up, will not lift up, and so the Yerushalmi asks, "V'chiyesh Torah nafelas?" It says, "Cursed be the person who doesn't stand up the Torah." What are we talking about? The Torah fell, you didn't pick it up? That we're talking about?
No.
So the first answer is, which the Ramban will elaborate on soon, is Reb Shimon ben Yakim Omer Zeh HaChazan. This is referring to the Chazan. Now the Chazan in this context doesn't mean the person who is leading the service, but it means a person involved in something in the shul. It means a person who is involved in something in the shul and he's not doing what he's supposed to do. Now we'll have to see what that means soon. We'll get back to that. And then he quotes, then the Yerushalmi continues, Shimon ben Chalafta Omer, Zeh Bezdin Shalmatan. This is referring to the Beis Din, a rabbinical court. This is referring to, says the Ramban, a king or rabbinical court that has the power to make sure that people are keeping the Torah. So for instance, give you a for instance, example. And we spoke about this on Tisha B'Av. It's one of the classic things that we mentioned on Tisha B'Av. There was once a king. His name was Yoshiyahu. Yoshiyahu's father and grandfather were idol worshippers. They brought the Jewish people to idol worship, and there were no Torahs around until the Kohen Gadol, when Yoshiyahu became the king. He became the king very young, and I think what I'm about to say happened later on. I don't know how old he was. I think he was already past bar mitzvah, but. So a king, one of the Kohen Gadol, one of the high priests, found a Torah scroll. He found the Torah scroll, which was hidden away, because all the Torah scrolls were taken away by the previous kings. Found the Torah scroll, and he told the king about it. So Yoshio asked the Kohen Gadol, the high priest, what was the Torah open to? Like Torah, right? You opened up the Torah. Where was it? What did it say when you opened it? And the pasuk that he said was this pasuk. This is where it was open to. Arar asher lo yakim es divrei haTorah hazais. Cursed be the person who does not stand up the Torah. When Yoshio heard that, he said, Olai lahakim. It's upon me to stand it up. Stand it up means to, as we say in English, to uphold it, to make sure the Torah is fulfilled. A king, and what did he do after that? He actually went on a whole campaign to bring the people back with tshuva, to bring them back from idol worship. And he actually had soldiers going from house to house, eradicating the idols that they had there. But the problem is that there were certain people that hid the idols in a certain way, that when the soldiers came in, they couldn't see them. They basically, imagine you have a door, a doorway that has two doors, and the doors open up in. Meaning you open them, you push them forward, and then they lean against the wall. So what they did is they set up their idols on the inside, half by one edge of the door, half by the other edge of the door. So when the soldiers opened up the door, they were now behind and they couldn't see them. And Yoshio didn't realize this. And at the end of the day, that was his downfall, because we won't get into the whole story, but that was his downfall at the end. But Yoshio understood that as a king, he has the power to uphold the Torah. He has the responsibility and the power to make sure the Torah is being kept. If people are worshiping idols, he has to destroy the idols. There was for many years that the Beis Din, the rabbinical court, especially in the times of the Mishnah and the Chumash and the Mishnah, the Torah and the Mishnah, that had the power to enforce laws. The halacha talks about, if a person, I keep going back to the example of building a sukkah, but if a person, isn't building a sukkah, so they send the person to say, how come you're not building a sukkah? And if he says, they will force him to build a sukkah. They can enforce the laws of the Torah. They have the power to do that. They have the power to punish if a person doesn't keep the laws of the Torah. This is not the power of the rabbinical court. Lost that power already a long time ago for certain aspects, and now there is no rabbinical court that can really, really enforce what it decides. But there was a point of time that it could. So the pasuk that says, "Cursed be the one that doesn't stand up the Torah," means he doesn't uphold the Torah. He doesn't, when the Torah is, so to speak, falling, people are not keeping it, and he has the power to get them to keep it, and he doesn't do so. That's what the curse is going on. And as the Rishalmi brings the following statement, again following this idea. Lamad v'limeid. Imagine you have a person who learned Torah and taught Torah. V'shama v'asa. He guarded the Torah, meaning he kept the prohibitions. He performed the positive commandments. So, very accomplished person, learned, teaches, he's kept all the mitzvahs, and he has the power to uphold the Torah, but he doesn't do so. He's included in this curse. That means you can personally be very accomplished, but if you have the ability to uphold the Torah, to make sure that other people keep the Torah, you have the power to do that, and you don't do that, you're in this curse. Now, how far this goes, I'm not sure, because the example that's given is Zeb Bezdin Shalmatan. Talks about a Beis Din, which means a body that has the power to actually enforce. Does this statement about the person who's accomplished personally but doesn't uphold the Torah, that include a person who, let's say, again, he's accomplished, he teaches, but he doesn't go out and influence people. He could have influenced people without enforcing anything, but he could have influenced people to keep the Torah, and he doesn't do that. Is that person also included in here? Possibly, I'm not sure. But according to this explanation, the person who is upholding or not upholding is talking about those who have the power to make sure that amongst the people, the Torah is being kept. They have the power to do so. They can make it happen, but they don't do it. They don't fulfill that responsibility. They're included in this curse. Now the Rambam then gets back to the what it meant before when it said the person doesn't pick up the Torah, is talking about Zeh Chazan. What's it referring to? So it has two explanations. Now again, when us understand, he calls these interpretations agadic, kind of like midrashic, meaning they may not be the full sense of what we're talking about, but they're also included. And he says, the first example he gives, what's the chazan? The chazan means the person, we'll call him the gabai. And what's his job? His job is he's responsible for the Torahs in the Aron, in the ark. Okay? And he has to make sure that when they're in the ark, that they are in the ark in a way that they don't fall. Meaning, if he has a responsibility to make sure that the Torahs are standing and are stored in the proper way they shouldn't fall, and he doesn't do so, he's cursed at a certain level. So Zeh Chazan, the Chazan who's not holding up the Torah, means the Chazan who is not making sure that the Torahs in the ark are positioned properly, they shouldn't fall. That's one explanation. And the other explanation, he says, Zeh Chazan refers to the person who does Hagba. Person who does Hagba. What's the person who lifts up the Torah? What's he doing it for? So that everyone should see the actual script of the Torah, the actual writing of the Torah. You know, anybody gets an aliyah and they're looking inside the Torah itself, it's a certain experience. There's a certain connection, there's a certain energy there. And to some degree, even if you didn't get the aliyah, we want everyone to see the Torah itself, to see the words of the Torah itself. So the job of the person who does Hagba is to pick it up so that people should see it.
He should turn to see.
He turns this way, he turns that way, but he's holding it up in a way that people should be able to see it.
People who are not called to
aliyah. Right. Everybody there should see it. Meaning, when the Chazan does that, everybody's supposed to stop and they say, Zos HaTorah Shesamoshe. This is all part of the experience of the honor we give to Torah by the Torah reading. It's all part of that. Okay, so here's the guy, he does Hagba, and what does he do? He picks it up. Doesn't lift it up too hard, doesn't overwork himself too much, kind of picks it up, moves it around a little bit, sits down. He did not pick up the Torah. Here was his chance for everyone to have that experience of seeing the words of the Torah itself, of giving honor to the Torah, and he doesn't do it. He is included in this curse. Now, again, I'm going to assume it's not as serious as the other things mentioned before, but again, it's a serious thing. It's a little thing, but it's serious because it's an example of not giving the Torah the proper respect that it should receive. And therefore, that is also, says the Ramban, included in this curse.
But this is everything from Rambam or first one?
Ramban, Nachmanides.
This is from Rambam.
Yeah, everything I'm telling you right now.
This is everything from
Everything
Rambam.
is from Ramban.
But it's much different between this last one and first
Yeah,
one.
he says, because what I'm telling you, because it's different levels of interpretation.
Okay.
Okay?
But the same Rambam.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Okay. Now, the last explanation I'm going to share with you is from a commentary called the Torah Tamima. The Torah Tamima passed away in the early 1900s. His name was Rabbi Baruch Epstein. And you know where one of his rabbinic positions were? Holyoke, Massachusetts. You know where that is?
But this is not Hebrew College. What is Holyoke?
It's the name of a city.
City, I know the city.
It's not where Danny Bertrand works. That's Holy Cross.
Holy Cross.
This is a city, Holyoke, Massachusetts. Martin, where's Holyoke? Holyoke, I think, is towards Western Massachusetts. I think so. Western Mass. It's definitely west. And he was the rabbi in Holyoke. He was a great scholar.
I believe it's all Jewish people were around Boston.
So he was in Holyoke. And he wrote a commentary on the Chumash, where what he did was, he basically, on every verse, he cited some Talmudic, Midrashic source, right? And he brought it down, on the verses, he has a letter. The letter tells you to look down, what medrash or what source in the Talmud he's bringing that relates to that verse. And on the bottom, had a commentary. So on this pasuk, on this verse of Arashar Yakim, cursed by the person who does not pick up the Torah. So he also says something similar to the Ramban. He quotes one of the same sources, but this source has something more. And listen to this; it's fascinating. So he brings down a medrash that says like this: Lamad v'limed v'shamar v'asa. He learned, he taught, he kept, he did. V'yasipek v'yadei lahaksik v'lo hachsik. And he had the ability to uphold, meaning to make sure it's upheld by others. V'loi hachsik, and he didn't do so. I can teach you Torah, right? And I'm just teaching you Torah as a subject, right? I'm not necessarily making sure that you're keeping it. Or on a broader sense, when you have the ability to have the community uphold, you have the ability to do that, and you didn't do that. But this is the example. He starts off, a person could do that. Hopefully a person who's teaching others Torah is also making sure that they keep the mitzvahs. But here's a person. He teaches, he learns, he teaches, he himself performs, he himself keeps, but he had the ability to uphold the Torah by others didn't do so. He's included in the Orah. That we heard from the Ramban before, right? Mm-hmm. But now he quotes the other way around. How about a person who is loy lamad, he didn't learn, loy limed, he didn't teach, loy shamar, he didn't guard, v'loy asa, he didn't keep, the hechzik, but he upheld it, but he picked up the Torah. He held up the Torah. Harehu b'chlal baruch. He's included in the blessing of the person who, blessed be the person who upholds the Torah. So listen to that one. Listen to this. Again, he didn't keep.
But what he did.
So what did he do? That's the question, right? What does it mean that he didn't keep, right? He didn't teach, he didn't learn, but he upheld the Torah. How did he do that? You have any ideas?
No.
The answer is, says, and so the he doesn't say it like this Torah Tamima, but Torah Tamima says the person who is hexik. The word is hexik. That's the word. A hexik means strengthen, right? And the word hexik actually relates to what's called hachzakas haTorah, strengthening the Torah, supporting the Torah. Imagine you have a person who didn't learn Torah, but he supports Torah institutions. He makes sure, right, that Torah institutions are able to function. How's that? He supports them. He supports Torah. At the end of the day, people cannot learn Torah without somebody supporting the institution that's teaching them. So what this person is doing is he's not directly interacting with people to get them to keep the Torah, but what he's doing is he's supporting monetarily, financially. He's supporting the study of Torah financially, which allows the Torah to be studied. That person is the person who is standing up the Torah. He's keeping up the Torah. He's upholding the Torah. He is making sure that the Torah will be studied and will be taught and therefore kept. So this person, who he may not be very accomplished, but at the end of the day, he is supporting Torah. He is financially making it possible for others to study Torah because he supports institutions of Torah. Even though he himself is lacking, he is included in the blessed be the person who keeps up the Torah. That's amazing. It's an unbelievable idea. But it's an idea that's mentioned in many, many sources, that how important it is and what kind of great merit and reward is in store for those who support the study of Torah. And even if they themselves, for whatever reason, aren't learning Torah, they may not be able to learn Torah, not learning as much Torah as the people in those institutions are learning. But because his support, his financial support, or maybe it can be other support, but it's primarily, it primarily manifests itself in financial support. If his financial support is what keeps up the Torah, it makes sure that the Torah, it makes it possible for institutions of Torah, for people to study there. That person, even though he himself may be lacking in his fulfillment and learning, he is included and blessed be the person who upholds the words of the Torah.
But it means, but this is contradiction. He support, exceed his
observance.
Yeah.
There are a lot of people like that.
I know a lot of people, but
there are a lot of people like that.
I believe you need to say thank you, but why is blessing?
Because he's accomplishing something very important.
Even
though he himself is not doing what he should be doing, he's not keeping the Torah as he should, he's not learning Torah as he should, the fact that he is supporting Torah is a great merit. He gets credit for that, and he gets a lot of credit for it.
But what happened if he lost his values? All
okay,
he fell down.
He lost out on it. What are you going to do? Listen, we can't always explain everything that Hashem does, because sometimes the bracha comes in other ways, the blessing comes in other ways. Okay. But the point is, this last interpretation, the Torah Tamima, is the interpretation of the person who upholds the Torah, means the person who supports Torah. And it's talking about the great merit of supporting Torah, of making Torah study possible. That itself is a tremendous merit, which in many sources we find is a merit equal to the person who's studying. That the person who supports the person studying gets a reward like the one who is studying it himself. Does he have that here? Yeah. Those who support Torah, make the Torah learning possible, their reward is equal to the ones who are actually studying it.
This is we now, is this idea still believe this idea?
Yes. Okay. Have a good evening. Thank you for listening.
This is Parshat.